Welcome to Inside Hilltopper Athletics Football Edition. I'm Len Allum. I'm the Director of Athletics here at West Liberty University, and I'm again joined by Head Coach Roger Wiley. Coach, thanks for taking your time and coming back again.
Thanks for having me.
Well, as we talked last week, these things are way more fun when you win as opposed to coming off a loss. My only complaint with the win is every time you do this to me, you take about 5 years off of my life. So, quick thoughts on the game.
Well, I thought we battled adversity well. You know, there's a time in the game where we were getting down to the 3s and 4s, and they really stepped up and played well and kept us in the game and gave us a chance to win at the end. And there's always negatives. The biggest negative is that we weren't able to keep our composure once we got up. You know, it should have been over after the field goal, and we got two 15-yard penalties that put us behind the 8 ball. And, you know, we could have made things a lot easier on ourselves. And that's just maturity coming up, because that's what we've been preaching all last week. And you know as well as I do in coaching, sometimes the more you preach about something, the more it happens. And so, but we got to continue to grow and really mature as a team.
Well, we were talking as we do the live stream of the game. Isaac and I were talking at halftime how similar this game was to AB. That if there wasn't a scoreboard and you're not looking at the stats, you're thinking West Liberty's up double digits. And you look at the scoreboard and we're actually down. So were you having similar thoughts that it was kind of playing out like AB?
Yeah, I handled it a little differently at halftime, and it comes down to really the same thing. We have to beat too many people on Saturdays right now. It's, you know, and the worst one is ourselves. We're our own worst enemy. And if we can get out of the way of ourselves, things would happen a lot better, a lot smoother. But sometimes we overthink things, and when I say we, I mean coaches and players also. We just got to get to the point where we're just playing and reacting and not thinking, and get out of our own way, and things will run a lot smoother.
You come out in the third quarter, much like the AB game, and you rip off two touchdown drives. You go up 20-7. Then things turned a little bit after the onside kick, or however you want to call that. But to give you credit, you guys hung in there even when you lost it on downs. You get a stop on defense. You force a punt. Take us through the last drive.
Well, the last drive, we knew how much time we left. We work on it every Tuesday at practice. This afternoon we'll end practice with 2 minutes like we always do. We try to put the kids in situations in practice that they would happen in the game, and that's one of them we do every week. But going through the big thing was determining when we were going to use our timeouts, because I had to use a timeout earlier in the game because we didn't like what we saw. We had a play called, and we ended up changing the play on one of the scoring drives. And so going through there, I decided we're going to use it on second. What I didn't want to do is use it on first down, and then on second down they get a big gain and they get it. So I was looking at using it when we had opportunities to get them in a punting situation and stopping the clock. So that was my mind, the thoughts going through my mind. So we had a big stop on first down, called and let it run. Got a big stop on second down, called timeout. And, you know, we were trying to force them to run the quarterback, and we got a stop on third down.
Yeah, and I'm a big proponent of not burning that timeout. If you can win that first down, you have the ability to save that timeout. So, you know me, I've taught clock management my whole life. I'm almost obsessed with it, and I thought that was a great decision. In a perfect world, how much time into your mind do you think you should have? A minute? Is a minute enough to go 50 yards?
Yeah, we actually, when we practice, most of the time we go 65 yards and use a minute 13. That's what we've worked on in practice. Now we mix it up every once in a while, but it seems like the last 3 weeks in our 2 minute, we've worked 2 minutes. And the one thing is 2 minutes before the half and 2 minutes before the game, there's a little bit of difference in those. And so there's more of a sense of urgency. And, you know, before halftime, you don't want to give up one. You don't want to. So, we might be more conservative in our play calling, even though we're trying to score. And so, but at that, we were just trying to create matchups, get one-on-one. We constantly preach to them in practice. Coach McGee does a great job. Get out of bounds, get out of bounds, get out of bounds. Quarterbacks, you don't like it, throw it away. Live to play another down. So those things that we preached came to fruition in practice in our 2-minute drill.
Walk us through the game-winning kick. Obviously, I think you had a 4th and 5.
Yes.
So you're looking at either going for it on 4th and 5 or kicking a 48, 49-yard field goal. Walk us through your thoughts on that.
I did ask on the phones to the coaches. I said, we need to kick it here. And they said, yeah. And I looked up, and it was downwind. That's why I took the wind in the 4th quarter. One of the rare, I can't remember ever doing that before. And just was on the skit. Referee always comes up to me right before the kick. He goes, which way you want to kick? I said, we're kicking into the wind. We're going to take the wind in the 4th quarter. And normally the wind picks up here later in the day. So that was the thought process. But as soon as, wind, I said, this is probably about 43 yards in actuality with the wind. But he has the leg to make them from 50 plus. Consistency, trusting the hold, trusting the snap is where he has to get better, but he did a great job getting it up, getting it through, and I think it made easy.
Yeah, it was, if you could say, a perfect kick, and it would have probably been good from 52, 53. So fortunately for me, calling the game on TV and watching from this angle up here in this press box, we knew it was good from the second it cleared the line. So Justin Kaplan ends up hitting a game-winning kick. Me being a stat nerd, I then started sitting around at home that night, Sunday morning, and thinking, I've watched most of the games over the last 30 years. I think I've missed 5 or 6 football games in 30 years. So then I started going, how many times has this happened? Well, that wasn't hard to research because a lot of those stats we have online.
Right.
So then when I got through that, I said, all right, I've gone down the rabbit hole. I'm going back 100 years. So I did go back 100 years, and I think it's happened 6 times in those 100 years. Does that surprise you? It's only happened 6 times? That's about 1,000 football games.
Yes, it does surprise me, and I've been here. 4 come to mind for me that I remember vividly. But yeah, that seems awful low. But yeah, and I think it gets blown out of proportion because if you watch NFL games, you see it every week. There's a walk-off field goal every week in the NFL. But then contrary, if you look at college football, you really only get a couple a year. And so, I mean, I'm talking on the Division I level. So I think as things trickle down, it'll be smaller and smaller.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. But just a great way to end the game. Took years off of my life again, like every one of these games. Can you please just make it easier? So when I drive down to Glenville, let's make it easier. What about unsung players? Anybody you want to mention that maybe doesn't show up in the stat sheet?
One of them would be Jordan Demus. You know, he did give up a touchdown pass. He got caught guarding the inside slot where normally when we play nickel, he's outside, and somehow the matchup put him on the inside. But what doesn't show out is the tackles that he made on special teams, coming from out of nowhere. And, you know, everybody always noticed I would just look at the short tackles, and he was able to make some short tackles on special teams and do some things on special teams. So I would say that after watching the film, Jordan Demus is probably one of the unsung heroes.
Good, yeah, it's one of my favorite. My favorite segment's coming up next, the Tuesday morning quarterback. But I'm a big believer. So many plays in a game that you're a common person, you're watching the ball, you don't see some things. So I always like to get that in. All right, Tuesday morning quarterback. What's thoughts? Anything you would have done different? Any decisions that you would change?
The only one that can be questioned is when we went for the pooch kick, and I was looking for the knockout punch, to be honest, and we just didn't get the kick far enough. The hole was there. They were leaving a big hole on that opposite sideline, and their guys were just running out. And if you look at it on film, we kicked it to the front line guy, which we want to kick it about 10 yards over his head. But that would be the only probably critical decision in my mind in the game. I thought everything else was fairly easy decisions for me.
So how far on that pooch kick, how far is the ball going to travel if you could script it?
Well, if we kick from the 35, we want to kick it at least to the opposite 45. That's where the hole was. And so because their front line was on our 45, and so about 10 yards over his head, just because the angles and the way they were retreating, they were taking their upbacks on that side, and as soon as he kicked it, they were on a full sprint because they knew we were going to kick it to our right side, their left side. And so, and the coaches, coach watch, and I watched a couple kicks. I said, all right, go ahead and try it. If we get it back here, we can get a knockout blow and go. Unfortunately, we didn't execute it. And the penalty for that is you give them field position, you give them an opportunity. But the biggest reason I did it is because I thought our defense was playing so well. I mean, we had probably 3 consecutive 3-and-outs to that point.
Yeah, I think I was looking at the stat sheet, and I believe when we pooch kicked that, they had 143 yards of total offense, and 98 of it was on one drive.
Correct.
So in 2.5 quarters, they had 45 yards of offense. So that's one of the advantages that you have when your defense is playing that well. Well, that wraps up our first segment. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back and ask Coach some other things.
The Panhandle Difference.
I immediately called Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration to see if they could clean and restore my home. Not only did they do that, but they even made it more beautiful than it was before the fire. If anyone ever has a tragedy like ours, I highly recommend you call Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration.
Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration, and we're gonna save you.
Welcome back to the second segment of Inside Hilltopper Athletics, the football edition. Coach, we have Glenville this week on the road. The conference standings are just crazy. Not that any of us are betting men, but I had said we have 7 football games left, and if Vegas was putting odds on our games, I don't think there would be more than a 3 or 4 point spread either way on any of these remaining games. So first of all, just give us your quick thoughts on the league standings as we speak, and it's still early, and then let's talk a little bit about Glenville.
Well, I firmly believe this is that, anybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday, and I try to tell my family that all the time. If they knew the outcome of the games, they wouldn't play the games. But you look at you look at Concord going down and beating Frostburg, and Wesleyan almost beating Concord. That just proves you Wesleyan hasn't won a game yet, and Concord hasn't lost a game yet, and Frostburg hadn't lost a game yet. So if you're into common scores, any given week, anything can happen to anybody. State, who was probably playing as well offensively as anybody, Notre Dame went down there and beat them 48-13 or something like that. So, again, it depends on where you are health-wise. A lot of things happen on our level that, you get the information on the Division I level because of all the media outlets. On our level, nobody, as much as we try to be accurate on our 2D last week, I went full intention that all these guys were playing. I get to practice Tuesday afternoon. Tyler Eli's out, so-and-so's out. So, we got to send the 2 deeps out on Monday. What are we doing there? So, a lot of it has to do with availability of players, how healthy you are, and a lot of times injuries are just an excuse, but, we try not to talk about them. If somebody's out, I don't even, so-and-so's out, we got to do this. No, we got to move on, play the next guy, and let's go. But I think that this year, more than any other year, the conference is somewhat evenly matched, and And when it's evenly matched like this, 1 or 2 plays each game could swing the tide. We look at Glenville in their last game. They were pretty much dominating the game, and they faked a punt. It didn't work. And then after that, it seemed like every break and every bounce bounced their opponent's way. And so, we have to make sure, first of all, we control ourselves. That's the only thing we can control, and do what we do. And this game's going to be probably a little harder for us because of the familiarity with the two teams.
Okay, tell us, what are we looking for with Glenville? What are we going to see?
Well, you're going to see, Glenville's always going to try to establish a run game, and when you come up, they're going to try to throw it over your head. They have some speed outside. They got a big 6'6" quarterback that's a true pocket passer that will stay in there and throw the ball all over the field. He has a strong arm, but he has weapons to throw through. But the biggest improvement in Glenville is their offensive line. It might be the best offensive line we've seen to date this year. They're able to move things. They're 50-50. They run the ball as effectively as they throw it. So that's always harder to defend when you can make somebody one-dimensional. Defensively, we're going to see a mirror image of our defense. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to base everything out of the 4-2-5. They're going to blitz and play zone. They're, not going to blitz and play man. They're going to do different things. But it comes down to us maintaining our composure, and execution. So that's who's going to win the game, because from here on out, every team's evenly matched.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So let's talk a little bit about Coach Keller, mutual friend of ours. Thoughts on facing Coach Keller, and give our viewers a little bit of his history and bring West Liberty into the equation.
We actually, when Coach Keller was leaving Glenville, and this might have been it was my first year here. I was the one that gave him, he came up, he was sick. I remember that. Came up and gave him a tour of West Liberty because it was between us and Fairmont and where he was going to finish his career, because at Glenville there was a guy named Jed Drenning that ended up beating him out and being the quarterback. He ended up going to Fairmont because we were starting a true freshman by the name of Jason Richards. And so after he was done playing, he got into coaching, and we had stayed in contact. And he was up in northern Michigan. He was at Fairmont. He was at Concord, Cal, Lenore, Ryan. But we've always stayed in touch. And actually, we were able to work it out the year that he left Lenore, Ryan, that we brought him up here to be our offensive coordinator. And a lot of things, we see football the same way, especially offensive football. So that's where the familiarity, we believe that, on this level, you have to have dynamic, skilled kids that take the pressure off the offensive line, because that's the hardest thing to find in the Division II level, is the bigger physical, because a lot of times the Division I schools take them just to practice. But that's the biggest familiarity, is that we're so simple, or so simple is the truth, but we're so familiar with each other. Right,
and I'm a Coach Keller fan, as you know. If he's out there watching, which I assume he will tune in to get some information on us, he still doesn't know anything about NBA basketball. So when he was working here for that year, we talked about the NBA practically every day. But great guy, he's done well everywhere he's been, so it'll be nice to catch up with him one Saturday. Let's shift gears here for a second. And let's keep in theme. We won the game on a field goal with 10 seconds left. Let's talk kickers. Now, kickers always have a reputation that they're eccentric. Have you seen that in your coaching career?
They're different. Everyone, but they're all different in a good way. I mean, and they want to work at their craft as much as, a quarterback wants to throw the ball. Obviously, sometimes with the dynamics of a football field and trying to practice 109 guys, they don't always get the space. So we try to give them the first half hour of practice. And then we always end practice with a special team. So, but yeah, sometimes it's harder for me to talk to them. I don't like yelling. I like talking to them. And you really... The things when I talk to a kicker, I kind of put them in the terms of golfing. It's not really how fast your leg swings. It's how much of the ball you catch at this point in time. and trying to be smooth and rhythmic and timing of your body will generate more power than, you can move your leg as fast as you can. And if your hips and shoulders are out of whack, the ball's not going to go as far as it's going to go off the side. So, I do talk to them quite a bit, even during the game. I caught Justin after the first snap was kind of high on the next field goal that he attempted. He was watching the snap go back to the holder and then watching the hold go down. I said, listen, you just like everybody else, you have to worry about your job and make sure that the other two are doing their job, and that's it. If it doesn't happen, the first ball he kicked on the extra point, the ball wasn't even on the ground. It was a high snap, and then when he went to put it down, he fumbled it, and he was trying to get it back up. But on the timing of things, because we create shorter edges, he had to go.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up, and that's, again, what I like about our podcast. I'm trying to educate the viewers. Well, you're actually trying to educate the viewers. And I don't know if I've ever had someone say the similarity between golf and kicking, that a lot of it is technique. It's doing things the right way. So great observation there. Snappers, holders, when you're recruiting, are we recruiting a guy just on long snapping? Do you convert people? Tell us a little bit about snappers and holders traditionally.
Well, traditionally we try to look for position players that also long snap, just because of the dynamics of the 36 equivalencies. You're not going to bring a long snapper in and just put him on a whole kinds of money and then that's all he does is long snap, and vice versa. You're looking for somebody that you can stack scholarship money to make it reasonable for their family. This was a unique year where we found two guys that just purely long snap. So we have a true freshman that does all the long snapping. He can do both, but he does primarily the punts right now. And then Maggio was a junior college transfer that we had signed first. And when they brought in the film on Sabella, I said, well, that is too good. We need two of them. I always say two and a spare. In football, you need get two guys ready and then the third guy ready, and then we should be okay. Very rarely do you go through three guys at one position. And so the thinking was like, yes, okay, we're going to bring in two of them. That's all they're going to do is long snap. We don't have to worry about them getting hurt playing a position, those types of things. And so it's worked out well. It's hard to find because when you're looking at high school football, there is really rarely any time where you find all he does is long snap. He doesn't play a position. Usually in football, they're always playing a different position.
Yeah, and kickers, again, they have that reputation about being eccentric. I've always defended kickers because I couldn't imagine that pressure going out and being under that pressure. And, it's almost like offensive linemen. You only notice them when they do something bad.
Correct.
You really only appreciate the field goal kicker. Or you don't appreciate them when they miss. And probably one of the craziest things I've ever heard in my lifetime of being involved in athletics was that Division I philosophy at one time that they wouldn't scholarship kickers.
Yeah.
And remember, and you may know this more than me, wasn't it 105 full scholarships football could give before they dropped it? Or was it unlimited?
No, it was unlimited. Then they went to 85.
Right, they're at 85, but I thought
they
it was
have
unlimited.
105 roster spots to start camp with. So they're allowed 85 full ride guys and 20 walk-ons, and they call them preferred walk-ons. Then once the first day of school starts, they can have as many players as they want.
Right, but can you imagine, you look at some of these teams, and if Bobby Bowden was here, he would probably enjoy talking about this. How many national championships did he miss out on because of wide right or whatever it was called? But remember, in the unlimited days, they wouldn't scholarship kickers. So that was just crazy. It is as important as they are. I think that's one of the craziest things I've ever heard.
Yeah, but if you look at it, it's the same things. You got NFL teams that refuse to use a draft pick on a kicker or a punter. And so, some people value things, and it's like anything in life. Some people think things are more important. We've always tried to scholarship a kicker because it's too important on this level because you saw Saturday. There has been years here where we were throwing a Hail Mary or trying to get the first down to get closer. So, you know, it's just everybody's I think, you know, the one that sticks out in my mind is Georgia had the kicker with the glasses, and he was an All-American, and he didn't get a scholarship to his senior year. To me, that's a kid that's meant that much to their program and won games for him.
Well, here, and I'll make one of my dumb analogies. I think not having a kicker on scholarship in those days is like not having car insurance. I just think, why would anybody elect to do that when you know what you're risking? So,
well, maybe they should make it mandatory to have kickers on scholarships.
In our level, when you don't have 85 scholarships,
Right.
I can see where you're prioritizing. Maybe you could talk me into it, but not at the Division I level. I think that's crazy. But again, thank you for joining us. We're out of the gate.
Yep.
West Liberty's 3-1. Travel to Glenville. Kickoff is at 1
1 o'clock, yes.
1 o'clock. Sometimes we have those noon kickoffs in our league. So everyone, please tune in. 1 o'clock. Hopefully we get out there and get a big win. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration for being the sponsor of this broadcast. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.